Steve, I'm very proud of you this week. You're not
Uh-oh.
wearing orange. You change up the fashion wardrobe
Oh,
this week.
yeah, I guess right. The week we're finally not playing Illinois, I'm not going to wear the
Uh,
orange, right?
I'm proud of you.
So,
I'm
who is it
proud of
this
you.
week? Yeah,
Iowa,
grays,
which
black and orange.
I
Oh,
had
but you have the
Steelers
black
stuff
on because
on.
the Steelers are on, right?
Yeah, and I had Steelers stuff on, and then I was like, I probably shouldn't wear that this week because it is the same. I
You
mean,
could have worn white and you'd have been ahead of the
would have
game.
been better. Um, Anyways, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. Steve, we've got a busy show today. We have a guest for the first time in a while. Seth Engle of the Daily Collegian stops by. He's the football editor. Um, great conversation with him. Just kind of on the student life of being a football reporter at Penn State, particularly. So we'll get to that, and then we've also got we've got some things to talk about both in the announcing department and in the football department regarding the Illinois game, and then we've got the as you mentioned, the whiteout weekend. I'm very excited about the whiteout weekend. And this week's Old Guy Young Guy brought to you by Steve's Weekend is how I think I'm what I'm hearing. So
Probably a preview of things to come.
okay, oh boy, oh boy. All right. Go ahead and listen to this interview with Seth. We will be back after that. Steve, I think for the first time ever we are joined by a guest younger than me. I think this is and our whole shtick is old guy, young guy, but now I'm maybe one of the old guys. Is that what we're got on?
You hold that kind of stuff into like right when we go on, like no prep, but yeah, you're right. Well played.
Okay. Yeah, well, hi Seth, how are you?
I'm doing well, Darian. Thanks for having me.
Of
I'm
course.
glad I can do that for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Boost your experience a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. This is why. That's right. We're joined by Seth Engle of the Daily Collegian. He is the football editor. He's covered the team for a couple seasons now. He's writing for the Philly Inquirer. You've seen his bylines on the Post Gazette. Originally from the Philly area, Jersey, Philly area, but a little bit of Chicago in there as well. I'm excited to chat with you. Pick your brain. I want to. Well, it's always good to chat with a fellow collegianer. We've had plenty of those on. Steve and I are both those. So let's get into it. I guess let's start here. Why do you want to go into journalism? Why is that? I know that's a job interview question, but why do you want to get into journalism? Why is this an interest for you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, it really started for me with writing, was always my thing. And growing up, I think like any kid that eventually gets into this career path is, a love for sports. And you start to see your grades growing up, math's dipping down and your English grades are going up. And you start to say, okay, well, how can I combine sports with, my ability to write well? And it got to a certain point where I wrote for my high school newspaper, and I was the editor in chief there. And eventually, when I was time to look for colleges, I was like, what better place than to cover Penn State football? You know what I mean? And right there and cover that team. So that's kind of how we're here, and that's why I do what I do.
It was Penn State like was that your dream school or were there other schools in the process? Like why did you pick Penn State? Was it simply because to cover, potentially cover the football team?
Yeah, my mom went here. She was here during the national championship teams in the 80s. So, I mean, growing up, I was always, a relatively big Penn State football fan. I'm kind of just around it on Saturdays. And, my dad went to Cornell, but he too, he's basically like an alum as well. So it was a very big Penn State family. Always kind of knew I wanted to come here. It's just a matter of, actually getting in at a certain point. I don't know if my grades in high school were good enough, to get into Penn State, but I worked really hard, my sophomore and junior years to really boost those grades, and eventually became a reality. So couldn't be happier.
So, and then I guess more specifically, what led you to join the Collegian and kind of what was that process like? At least, and what is that process like for people that don't necessarily know? You're talking to two people that joined the Collegian, but there's a lot of people that haven't joined the Collegian listening.
Yeah, so I mean, when it came time to actually pack my bags and go here, I knew that I wanted to report on Penn State football. That was my goal when I was applying to school. And coming from Chicago, I didn't really know many people when I first arrived. It was also COVID, So there wasn't much opportunity to even meet that many people. So joining the Collegian or an outlet like that was pretty much a no-brainer. But it's actually something funny that I tell people a lot is, I actually applied for Onward State and had an interview there and didn't get it. So that was before I had my Collegian interview. Didn't get in with Onward State, interviewed with the Collegian and, got in there. And, that kind of thrived me, I think, for that first year to, work super hard and kind of show it to the Onward guys. And then eventually, I became friends with some of the people that didn't even let me on. But, it's the Collegian, it's such a great place. And I think it's a great opportunity to learn like traditional journalism and really hone your crafts as, not just a blogger, but, as a real journalist. And I think in an era that, desperately needs, talented young people who kind of know what they're doing.
How long was it to you what was the transition when we talk about sports, right? They talk about the transition from high school to college football is really big. What was the transition from high school journalism to college journalism like in terms of writing, skill set, and you learning what was good in the new world?
Yeah, it's night and day. I mean, it really is. There wasn't much organization when I was in high school. Like I said, like I was the editor-in-chief for a year, but I was basically just figuring it out on my own. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. The editorial staff that was there before had graduated, so you kind of just come in and it's like, all right, we're doing it now, and we're doing everything. I think it was more news oriented too, at least my focus. And then I came to the Collegian, and it was like they had like there are generations of people who have written for the Collegian, so everything that we do more or less has stayed the same for a while, unless the industry has kind of forced some changes. But the way we do things and our ethics and, kind of our values have pretty much remained the same for a while. And I think that's really important, to maintaining a successful, student newspaper.
When you were what was your first coverage event related to Penn State football? You talked about wanting to cover Penn State football. What was that first event, game, news conference? Do you remember that interaction and how you felt? And then I guess assess how you did with it, looking back on it.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because it was still COVID when I got on the staff. I'd covered lacrosse for spring of 2021, and I was only able to go to one game in person because the credentials were limited. So by the time I, got on football after that lacrosse season, there really wasn't much in-person reporting that I had done. So that part of it was, a little nerve-wracking, and even still, it took a little while for me to even get an in-person press conference for football. So I was hopping on the Zooms, and that was an interesting experience when you went from, Tambroni press conferences for lacrosse with maybe 4 people. And then on the Zoom calls, it's like, 60 or 70, and there's no chance that you're going to be able to ask a question. So I think that was the biggest transition. But my first in-person event was Big Ten Media Day. And that was, that was spectacular. I mean, I was starstruck. You get to see all these big time coaches, not just Franklin for the first time in person, but all those big time coaches and 3 of the best players from each of the teams participating. And that was something that I just remember driving home from that and just feeling, so excited and I guess happy. And I think that kind of, thrived me to keep going. And, I've been to 2 more Big Ten Media Days since then.
Cool.
Do you feel like you have an advantage as a student, being a student covering the football team? It's something, we've always kind of talked about on this podcast is, you're in class with whatever quarterback or whatever player type thing. Do you feel like you have an advantage? Or do you feel like you have a disadvantage, I guess would be the other side of that?
Yeah, I don't know if there really are too many advantages. I mean, I think it is interesting to see like Drew Aller in your RPTM class. I'll say that. I don't know if that's necessarily an advantage because it's not like I'm asking him questions or anything. Like I don't want to do that. He thinks about football all day. Like when these guys are in class, I don't really want to bring it up unless I'm like, build like a friendship with them, which is hard to do. I feel like the disadvantages are kind of outweigh the advantages in a lot of ways. I think there's, somewhat of a negative connotation to being a student journalist in, what is one of the largest beats in the country. The opportunities are already limited because of that. And I think, they're granted to the guys, rightfully so, who have been on the beat for, 40, 50 years. There's some OGs on that beat that you're not necessarily here to steal a question from. And I think it's difficult to, ask questions at times, especially in Franklin press conferences. But I don't know. It's a learning experience more than anything. And I think that like once you kind of realize that, then you don't really take it personally anymore when it comes to whether you're able to ask questions or not.
You feel like maybe both? I guess actually, let's break this question into certain parts. Do you feel like players answer you differently because you're relatively the same age, and do you feel like James Franklin or insert ex coach here answers you differently because you're not relatively the same age?
Yeah, I'll start with the players. I mean, I don't. I think it depends kind of how you phrase it generally. I don't think they really care if you're, a seasoned vet or not on the beat. They're just there to field the questions. And if you phrase it correctly or in a way that they like, then they're gonna, give you, a certain response. And I have seen like from personal experience, when I was coming up, obviously wasn't as good as asking questions, as I am right now. And I still don't think I'm, phenomenal in any regard. But I mean, you do start to see when you make little shifts to how you ask questions, how, people respond to them. And I think that's, one of the biggest things I've learned over the past couple of years. But with Franklin on Wednesdays, that's, I don't know. I think he's fair at times, but I think that, with student journalists, there are maybe just people that he doesn't know or hasn't seen before. Maybe there's just a little something there. I don't think, he has any bad blood whatsoever. But I think there definitely is more, comfortability with someone that's been covering the team for, a decade or two.
How much of a resource, if any, are those OG writers? Like, have you tried to at least tap into them at all in terms of at times you've crossed paths you're not working to say, hey,
Yeah.
just want to pick your brain or what's been your approach to that?
Oh, absolutely. There are a number of guys on that staff and girls that, have been extremely helpful to me coming up. I think it was a hard transition when you just join this historic beat with some of the best, sports writers in the country are on that beat, and you kind of don't know what you're doing. But then once you kind of set your feet in and, people start to recognize you a little more and you gain a little more confidence. And I tell, my Collegian staff is like, you should reach out to these people and, ask for help. Because they really are nice people and, they have loads of experience. But there are a ton of people on that beat that I've gone to for help and that I've, built pretty good relationships with.
You want to give a shout out to any of them? To the Collegian people? I found that when I would work with the Collegian people that used to work at the Collegian a long time ago type thing, they would kind of look out for the student journalists. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially because a lot of the beat is made up of Collegian alums. I think there's, you know, there's some want to kind of give back a little bit, which I feel as well. That's kind of why I'm doing the football editor thing right now. Is I've been doing this for a couple of years as a reporter now. To be able to kind of give back and teach as much as I can to people who are still not too far removed from where I was 1 or 2 years ago. I think that's really cool, and it's always fun for me to hear kind of how the beats evolved. Like Mark Brennan, especially, is a guy that just has stories, which I always appreciate and love to hear. Rich Garcella too. They have seen this program go from one spot to another, and they're just open books really. So that's always really interesting to hear.
Specifically for you, I think one of the unique challenges is all of those beat writers, that is their day job. Like that is what they do. They are, if James Franklin is speaking at 12:30 on a Tuesday, they are there. You've got to deal with scheduling classes almost around or through or that. How does that work, and how do you handle kind of the going from class Seth to journalist Seth?
Yeah, I mean it sucks. There's really no way to sugarcoat that. It's really hard. Like I feel like I'm already working a full-time job at times. And then to have to, on Tuesdays, like I have three classes, and it's also the day that Franklin speaks, which is right in between, my first class and my second class. And then there are player availabilities through that, and then there's writing, and then there's also editing. My Tuesdays and Wednesdays are very long, and a lot of that is just because of having a class schedule, which is it's hard to really complain about it because that's why I'm doing the Collegian. That's why I have all these opportunities, is because I'm a student. But at the same time, once you get to your senior year, it's like, okay, I'm doing this again. I'm still doing classes, even though my main priority at that most of the time is covering the team and kind of running my staff. So it's an interesting balance, but I think by now I've kind of made it work, as busy as it gets.
On what is the biggest difference for you between Seth, the writer, and Seth, the editor, and I guess more specifically in the football editor position?
Yeah, I think most of it is kind of running a beat for the first time. So if I were to, let's say, if I had my own publication where I was writing for a paper and kind of scheduling my own content and stuff like that, I feel like that's more similar to being football editor than solely being a reporter on the staff. Because I have to, we brainstorm, ideas and certain angles and schedule stories and stuff like that. And if I were to be on my own or just have one editor, by my side, it's going to be pretty individual. I mean, that's kind of how things have been with editing. So I like that part of kind of having control of our beat and the way that we do things. But writer Seth, I feel like is I'm also trying to look for creative angles and kind of just build my craft, and honestly just improve as a writer. I think has been really important.
You have goals or stories you want to try to get done in the next period of time before you're done with school, or things that you're focused on that you hope to make happen? And you talked about the improvement, but I'm curious if there's anything that's out there aspirationally to try to make happen.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to get a job. I think that's my number one. That's my number one goal. Probably most seniors right now. Um, but I mean, short term with writing, I mean, there are a couple stories that have kind of been on my mind that I've started to put the pieces in place for. Working with John Affleck a lot has been great, and we're coming. I did Little League too at the start of the year, Little League World Series, which is an awesome experience. I'm doing that for the Associated Press, and kind of branching off and doing something bigger with that, and Monet Davis, because her 10-year anniversary is coming up next summer. So that's something that that's a big feature that I'm looking to complete pretty soon. But yeah, I think ultimate goal is graduate and hopefully have a job as soon as I get back to Chicago in May.
Is
Your
this
parents appreciate that.
yeah, that yes, I'm sure of that. Is this what you want to do? Do you want to write professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's hands down. I think it's interesting what my friends kind of see me, like my roommates, when they kind of see me do my thing, and now they're kind of used to it by now. I've had the same roommates for a couple of years now. So they understand, like, I'm gonna be gone for almost half the year. Um, and it's really like no sweat on my back. Like I love what I do right now. I enjoy the grind, as busy as it gets on those Tuesdays and Wednesdays, like I was talking about before. But doing travel and it's honestly it's a dream come true. It really is. So I see no reason to stop that at any point soon. And I only want to get better. That's my only goal.
Awesome. All right. This is your moment to shine, your moment to plug. I know you've got a podcast, you've got Twitter handle, and you've got all of your writing. There's a lot. This kid's busy.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, first things first, I want to start off with, you got to read the Collegian. PSU collegian.com. There's a lot of great stuff that we're doing. It's me, Joel Haas, Zach Allen, Sam Wallison. It's great coverage. The Collegian has been consistent for so many years, and this is one of our better staffs in my opinion, in a long time. I think, everyone's really strong there, and there's a lot of great stuff that we're doing. And multimedia wise, the Want to Know podcast, we just got a new studio. It's me and Zach Allen. So we're in a new podcast studio in the Willard building. Looks beautiful. And I guess aside from that, I also have a podcast with Adam Bittner, with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That comes out every Wednesday. So, that's a great listen as well, on YouTube. And aside from that, I mean, just, if you have time, read my stuff. I'm with the Philly Inquirer, Post-Gazette, and Collegian. But yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to read into that.
All right. Hey, thank you very much for doing this, Seth. We know you're busy. We know there's a lot going on. Good luck to you. You got a good head on your shoulders. I'm excited to keep watching you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Seth.
I like Seth. He's got a good, like I said, good head on his shoulders, and I think he's going places. He's been a very good read, like a good solid read. If you're really paying attention to Penn State football, a nice read to break things up, from your usual beat writers, and I think that's the important part of the Collegian's voice and kids like his. So good luck to Seth.
Look at you. Good luck. Young whippersnapper is going to be great. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the student voice is good. He's not only the youngest guest we've had, he's the first guest that I actually have in a class. So conscientious contributor, good stuff. So yeah, I think good kid.
Yeah, good. There you have it, Seth. There you have it. Anybody, Seth, particularly Seth's parents.
Seth's parents, you did a good job. There you go.
Good job, Seth's parents. We're proud of you too. All right. Anyways, tell you who's proud of me. My mom. She's proud of me because I know she was upset about the announcers. Let's see where to start. Let's start with Gus Johnson and the debacle that was Saturday's football broadcast. In fact, we will probably spend more time talking about that than we will the actual football game this weekend. Let me take a deep breath, think about what I want to say here. Honestly, I'm still bothered by it. I am still very bothered by the quality of the broadcast that we got on Saturday. Listen, if you've listened to this podcast for the last 3 years, you know that Steve and I aren't Gus Johnson's biggest fan. We're not Fox's biggest fan, particularly in college football. And Saturday's broadcast felt embarrassing. I don't think the quality in the broadcast was there, both in the visual quality, and really the quality that was Gus Johnson. But if this is the biggest part of your football weekend, which it was for Fox, and I get it, it's Penn State and Illinois, it's probably going to be an ugly, boring game, which is pretty much was what it was, when you could kind of look back at it in that lens. At least fake it until you make it, and give me a little bit of that energy. And I think the thing that we've been talking about, I was thinking about this earlier, the thing that we've been talking about on this podcast the most lately is the word consistency. And I think, look, like, I don't like Gus Johnson's shtick, but be consistent about giving me that shtick, because I think that is at least showing to me as a viewer that you care. And it was very clear that he didn't care. He didn't want to be there. Something else was going on. His mind was elsewhere. He was more excited about the Wings and Deion Sanders than he was any other play. Anytime Penn State did anything interesting, it was, and Penn State intercepted the ball and Penn State scored a touchdown. Where is the Gus Johnson that screams his head off like a lunatic? Like, as much as I don't like that Gus Johnson, give me that just Gus Johnson. It was apathetic and it was frustrating as a viewer. If we're going to be saddled with these Fox big noon kickoffs, I want the production to be good, and they just haven't been good. And it is dampening the fan experience because it's changing kickoff times for games that probably should be at night or later in the day. And this was just another check in that box of I'm not Fox's biggest fan when it comes to football.
Yeah, and I don't have my phone in front of me because this is the part where you would say, this is the text Steve sent me this weekend, and this is why we're talking about this. And Darian texted me and said, I'm writing about Gus Johnson. He's this And he's not good. And I'm like, you're surprised because, and I didn't know what was happening because I wasn't watching the game. And then I got back and watched it later, having read just like the headline of your thing, but not read the piece yet. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is different. This is not, well, he was nickname given, but it wasn't screaming. Yeah, like I don't know if something was up with him in general. And I don't know how Fox can invest as much as it does in college football and just do it. They don't do it to serve the fans. It feels more self-serving than serving the fans. We have the big score bug. We have louder fan noise. It's kind of even hard to hear Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt sometimes, honestly. And all you got to do is turn down that mix a little bit so you can serve viewers. So I don't understand that. And maybe there's a piece of it. Maybe Gus Johnson is hearing too many people saying, "Oh, well, he's not him," and he's toning it down. Although I don't believe that to be the case that he would do that. So, yeah, it did sound a little different. Yeah, I guess I was surprised about what it was when you said you were going to write. I thought he was doing something over the top, whatever. But there was no even under the top on Saturday.
Yeah,
which was interesting.
At one point, there was it was the Singleton touchdown at the end of the game, towards the later part of the game, I guess I should say. And at that point, my entire TweetDeck feed just lit up with what's wrong with Gus Johnson. And yes, like there are times when announcers annoy you as a fan. Like my mom, I know for a fact, turns the game off 10 minutes into every game. Like there are people that I know that they're just going to go listen to Steve and Jack. That's their first move. But there are other times when the announcers aren't really being that annoying and people are like, oh, they're really for this team. It wasn't that. It was something was off, and it was not a good broadcast. It was an embarrassingly bad broadcast. And I don't know if you caught this, and I wrote about it briefly, but even before the game, there was this weird lead in with Gronk doing like a dizzy bat type thing. And it's like, I'm here to watch my team. Talk about my team that I'm about to watch this game. If you want to go to Colorado and do whatever, that's fine. But talk about the game that you're about to show me on my television, because you're still obligated to do that because this is still your hallmark broadcast for the week.
Yeah,
and I think
that feels to me like the biggest thing. Like it was. The game might have gotten caught up in the wash a little bit of some other things that were going on in college football. And what clearly did with the pregame show moving. But that was, no, not again, we haven't talked about it. That was the right decision, right? You got to go there with that energy and that storyline and whatever else. And Champagne's not going to have anything. And they do an orange out and the stadium isn't full and all those things. So I understand that. But I do think not many people, unless it's Notre Dame and Ohio State, you're getting core fan groups for games, especially for this game, especially for Penn State, Illinois. You were getting core fan groups. So go ahead and serve those fans on both sides, rather than try to do something bigger about college football or funny or shtick or non-shtick. Just serve the fans. And I think you talk consistency. For me, it's always about, are we serving fans? And I don't know that Fox can answer that question on a consistent basis, that it's serving fans well.
No, it was very clear. And even like, to compare it to the 10 p.m. broadcast of the Colorado game, it is 10 p.m. at night. It was the most talked about. It was the most watched. I think it pulled a 16 point something in terms of a rating. And that broadcast felt good, professional, lively, fun, energetic. Like it was complimentary to both sides. It was a little Dion heavy, but it was relatively complimentary to both sides. And I don't know. It's just, for Fox to shell out the money that they're shelling out and then give you that really turd was bad. It was bad. Anyways, all right. Anything else there? I feel better after I got that one out. That was our first therapy session of the year.
Welcome to your first therapy session of the day.
All right.
Am I getting paid for that? I'm not getting paid for the writing. Am I getting paid for therapy?
By the way, Steve is only getting paid to write for the blog. That's his primary source of income. So surprise to Susan, who is listening. And Steve has made a whole whopping $0. It's just as much money as I have. Anyways, let's see. Moving on. I thought I think all things considered, looking back at the game, I think Penn State was very much fine. And sometimes you're going to have very much fine afternoons. And at the end of the day, Penn State had more points than the other team. And I think that is exactly how we'll go back and look at this game in 3-4 months. I think we finally saw for the first time all season the defense look like the defense it was supposed to look like. I don't think the quarterback on the other side of the ball was that great. I think Drew probably could have been a little bit better too. Didn't throw for a touchdown. That's okay. Not all of the incompletions were his fault. And I think it was very much, there were times when that game could have gone south and it didn't. And that felt very different than previous years. Looking at if Iowa's on the schedule, 2021 in Iowa, things start to go south and never correct back. And I think it wasn't as extreme this time around, but there were little blips, the block field goal, even some of the penalties. It could have been a lot worse than it was. And Penn State corrected themselves, kept a level head on their shoulders, put it together. And I think it was a comfortable, it felt uncomfortable at the time, but looking back and watching the game again, it felt comfortable towards the end. It was my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and I think that's a great summation, an accurate summation. And I'll actually go back to Fox, and it doesn't pain me. It was surprising to me that Joel Klatt offered that perspective a little bit end of the game and said, Penn State fans saw this game. They're probably thinking, oh, okay, we did okay, but what about Ohio State and Michigan down the road? Like, he offered that perspective late in the broadcast and said, this is probably what Penn State fans are thinking. And he's right. I mean, that's what it boils to. It's, yes, and this one's 30-some days away, and this one's 50-some days away, and those are the ones that matter. I think fans understand winning ugly. I think fans understand duds of games. I think that can be overblown by the media saying, "Oh, well, it's this kind of game." Fans get that. They watched enough to know that there's good days and bad days and whatever else. And last Saturday was an okay day against the team they were supposed to beat, and they did fine. They didn't look stellar, but they didn't do a lot of stupid stuff that really hurt them. The offensive line still, as you're looking, probably makes you wonder about the future. But the future's still at least a month away.
And I think the beauty of college football more so than the NFL is you have the schedule laid out the way you do, and you have the games versus Michigan, Ohio State, and then you have games against Illinois. And you use those games much more than in the NFL as building blocks. And I think as long as you can build and grow from the game, then I think you're fine. And I think that's hopefully what we'll see this weekend. Like I said, nothing really caused me like major alarm concerns. I think that the running game, I'm looking forward to the running game being more established. And I think my biggest gripe with the running game right now is that we gotta pick someone. Like, I think we gotta pick someone to that be the guy for a little bit. And I think someone's gonna get the steam, whether it's Nicholas or whether it's Katron. Like, I think said this before. I think Katron is the better back. Like, yes, Nicholas has more touchdowns, but you've got to let them build steam, and that isn't happening. And I think that was probably one of the reasons for me why I felt like the running game hurt. I don't think, and I agree with you, I don't think the line was as good as it can be, but it could have been worse, and we've seen it be a lot worse.
Yeah, and the one thing that strikes me talking about using these games to prepare for others, and I know there was a game earlier this season where they ran some player, some formation, where everybody talked about, oh, they're just putting that on tape for somebody to show, right? And then we have the Potts touchdown, and oh, they're probably just. I hope somebody somewhere, and it's not us, or maybe it's you quietly, and you're going to surprise me, is charting those things. Remember those. Can we get to Ohio State and Michigan, say, oh, yep, say that was that formation, and now they used it a different way, right? Like, because people say that, and I feel like they don't come back and say, hey, here it is in use. So
it is me. I literally had said right before they threw it, I was like, they're going to throw it here on the T formation, not the Potts throw that.
Right.
I think it's. I don't know if they're going to use it. I think it's just we're going to put that in the back of your mind that it could be coming if we line up this way.
Well, and everybody says that, right? Like everybody, I mean, I think Steve Jones made reference to it post game, whatever else, because I think he said, oh, now teams have to prepare for that. I just want to see if the stuff actually shows up in those games. Like even if the formations show up, right? Just if, I mean, again, I appreciate they had to prepare for it, but it would be a cool call.
T formation is always going to show up. I think I went back and watched that sequence in particular, and Tyler Warren got held, probably would have been the first read. I think Katron Allen probably should have caught that ball too. It pretty much went right through his hands. The throw was beautiful. So yeah, I'm lightly charting those, Steve. I'm lightly jotting this down. So all right, let's shift gears to this weekend. Penn State will take on Iowa, the number 24 team, 23 team in the country, somewhere in that range. It is the whiteout, but I think it is more importantly, and I haven't thought through this concept yet. So we're gonna think through it together, Steve. It is more importantly, I think, the rematch, the chance at redemption for the 2021 game. And I think that game, I don't think it necessarily bothers James Franklin, but I bet it just eats at him just a little bit, enough to be annoying. And I wonder if James Franklin, in like more so than his team, wants this one, just because that game really screwed up a whole season for him. More so, regardless of the injury to Sean Clifford in that game. And I forget who the big tackle was that got injured in that game as well. PJ Mustipher, I believe. I think that game just kind of, you could feel the air go out of that season as Taquan Robertson is getting charged with another false start penalty or delay game penalty. And I just think this is maybe the first time we're going to find out and see between that and then Kirk Ferentz's comments about smells like a rat. Does James Franklin, like, is he gonna? It's okay for him to maybe let his ego step in on this one, because I feel like he's always about the team. Nah, I think he personally wants this one. I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
Oh, I think that's probably true. I think he's smart enough not to say that publicly.
Yeah.
I think he is smart enough to make his team aware of it, because that's the differentiator, it feels like, anymore with college, some of college football. It's not so much because players turn over. I mean, not maybe at these two programs, but players, if they turn over, it's about motivation. It's about a reason. It's about us against them. It's about making it personal, as everybody's heard in Colorado for the past 2 weeks. Yeah, I think that game, the air went out of the balloon, right? And it was only Iowa, right? That's what makes it worse, right? They lose to Iowa, like, it's Iowa, and then they've got the other teams coming that always come, right? And I think that's what the fan base does. And I do think no matter how much a team is 1-0, they go there as well. I would be highly surprised if that happened this weekend. I appreciate Iowa is a good defense. I appreciate they have a much better quarterback than they've had back there before. I appreciate they've won here for the whiteout before. So that's great too. I guess I'd be surprised. I just think Penn State's the better team.
I think that shows up to me the most is I think we're going to find out something about this team in a good way that we didn't necessarily find out last week. So I don't know. I am interested in that. I want to go back to one other point on the Franklin Revenge Tour. It is no coincidence that this game is the whiteout. I wholeheartedly believe that there is no coincidence that James Franklin didn't say, I want that one to be the whiteout, and I don't care about anything else. Like, I think he knows.
But you would have set that game as the whiteout before the season. I would love to know that. Like, I would love to know the behind the scenes on picking the game, right? Because they're picking an early season game because they want the team to be undefeated for the most part. Like, it's not going to be a late season. It's never been, well, I don't know what the latest it's been, but it just feels like
Michigan. The one in my senior year was the second to last weekend of the season.
Okay. So it just feels like they're not going to wait though that long and hope that the teams, I don't know. And I don't know how much the TV networks had to do with it, right? Because, they got their sneaky whiteout for NBC for the home opener and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think he's upset about it. I just think I just think Penn State under James Franklin has consistently played in big games. They don't play down a lot. They do play up. The moment has not been too big for them often. You know, and I think this is going to be another one of those moments.
Here's something I was looking up. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the whiteout. The first whiteout, the Purdue game one. Steve, what is your favorite whiteout?
I remember Notre Dame as the first, right? Because there was just a vibe.
That was the first full stadium.
The first full stadium. Like that there was a cool vibe about that because it was the first one. So I remember that. The game obviously wasn't great. The Ohio State game, but that was 16, right? That was the whiteout?
Yeah, 2016. That was
probably that one, right? Because that was the loud one and the crazy whatever else stuff. Or no, 2005 Ohio State.
Well, 2005 was also an emotional one.
Yeah. Maybe Notre Dame just because of the first full stadium. I mean, I just remember the energy getting up to it, you know, and just the anticipation, and it was going to be something special and different. So maybe that.
I wasn't at that one. That one. That's one of those Penn State games I wish I could go back in time for and be at. I wasn't at 2005 either, unfortunately. I don't know, the Michigan 2013, that was probably one of the most special weekends in Penn State athletics ever. That was homecoming weekend. That was the opening weekend of Pagula. That was this really like, okay, like things are going to be fine. Like, I think that was the first time people kind of exhaled and were like, okay, like we can still have a football program that can compete relatively nationally and for big moments. That one, that was obviously would have been the second whiteout as a student. I think that one will always be my favorite. 2016 was always also very special. That was the first. I mean, that was the first time I had ever rushed the field at Beaver Stadium, and I think really a lot of people had ever experienced that. I was just curious on that. It's kind of crazy. Here's a fun quirk.
Were you an early adult? Go ahead.
I was just to say it won't next year won't be the 20th whiteout though because of COVID. Right. It would be the 19th whiteout. What was your question?
Were you on the field early in the field rushing process, or were you like watching and trying to figure out when to go? Like, how did that play out?
Yeah, it was more. It wasn't like late, but it was relatively early on. Enough that the picture of us on the field, there are still people running behind us. That I think have I ever told that story? Did I write that story in the seats? I don't think I did. So we weren't students anymore. That was my first season, graduated. I still have a core group of friends that were involved with Nittanyville, Corey Listogi, Michael Higgins, his now wife, Alex. And just like, it is the most insane story ever, but they rush the field, fall down, like first people on the field type thing. Our friend Jiwas falls down. Alex, she drops her phone. There's probably 70,000 people on the field at that point. And nobody could find the phone in the immediate area that she thinks she drops it. So I was like, well, somehow I had found them leaving the field. And I said, come on, we'll go to Lost and Found. And she's like, walks into Lost and Found. And she's like, has anybody found this phone? And the person is like, no. And she turns to her left and in walks a person carrying her phone while she walked in. It was just like this, like most bizarro, weird world. So anyways, that was fun.
Nice.
All right. Brad Nessler's on the call. Excited about that. I'm excited. I love Brad Nessler. That's a big
fan. I have to go look, and I don't know if I can dig it up. I'm sure I can somewhere. When was the last time that they didn't have like that? Then Alabama's got a game that afternoon. It's the leading game of this game. So CBS's number one team isn't on the Alabama game.
What was when Penn State played Alabama? I guess that would have been an ESPN game in State College. I was trying to think because this will be the first.
This is their first game in CBS since 1996 at Beaver Stadium.
And that was that a Pitt game?
That was a Pitt game. That was a Pitt game. Okay. And then their first game, they were on CBS last year against Auburn, and their most recent CBS game before that was at Pitt in 2000.
Okay. And then the Miami game was in there somewhere too.
Somewhere, yeah.
Down there. Okay.
Yeah, down at Miami.
Okay. So that's exciting. Something different. Anyways, all right. This week's old guy, young guy. You're up, Steve.
Brought to you by old guys who go to a small college football game on a Saturday to give Penn State a break. Go to check out Lycoming College football against Utica. There are no game programs, not even flip cards that they hand out to fans, not charge you $1 for a little piece of paper. It's all Lycoming Athletics / game day. And actually what's there is stats and drive charts, and it was fine. The Wi-Fi was good, but there's no rosters anywhere. And I just felt that, and again, the crowd was probably 65% family and friends. So perhaps they don't need the rosters and everybody knows them. But if that's the case, get 50 pieces of paper for the people who want the roster, who might just show up and would be willing to give you $1 for the printed 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to know who the people are on the field. So it just felt weird. Like they couldn't find a sponsor for the sheet of paper to give me rosters.
This is the most.
What, you want to go and not know who the players are?
It's just the way you're grumbling about it. It's the most old guy grumble you've ever had in the history of this segment. It's not wrong. I don't disagree with you. It's just,
well, I guess here's the bigger picture. Maybe like the bigger picture, right? So the one-off of small college football games may be something we try once or twice a year going forward, right? Okay. So the best way to follow that would be to have, now this is going to sound really old guy, right? Have a ticket stub, have a program. Neither of those, right? You pay your $5 and you're in. There's no ticket stub and there's no program. So
can somebody from Lycoming football send Steve something just so he has something?
I'm going to get a media guide in the mail from the one listener who knows the one person. Ooh. We did meet the tight ends parents from Utica, the second string tight ends parents from Utica, Ross and Sue, who were on their way to a wine weekend after watching their son's game. They were very polite. She's a West Virginia graduate. He graduated from Syracuse University. They were very talkative as we parked on the street for free and waited for the game to begin. So
did you tailgate?
We did. We got sandwiches from Sheets, actually plopped open the tailgate of the truck.
Oh, is
parked on the street outside the fence. Yeah, because they have a tailgate lot. Their tailgate lot costs $60 for the day. Not an amount I was going to pay. And I think 20 cars could fit in it when we walked by it. So the total cost of the trip was gas there, subs at Sheets, and $5 admission. So it was actually a cool little Saturday.
All right. You had fun.
Next up, we have another game coming up. You could join us.
Oh God. What game is it?
A Thursday night in Loretto, Pennsylvania.
Oh, St. Francis.
When St. Francis plays host to Wagner on a Thursday night.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
It's the Thursday night of Penn State homecoming week too, so you could be in town Thursday night for that, and then go in Friday to State College for homecoming festivities.
Steve's got a good idea. I will say, we went to a Princeton game. It's fun. It's different. It feels like a minor league baseball game. It feels very different. But yeah, I get Steve's gripe about not having programs or rosters of some sort. Somebody get Steve a roster. If only there was a thing on his phone that he could search it for it. Look at that without.
But it's really small, and you got it. I know. That's why. That's where it was.
Are you a programs guy? Because some people are. Some people buy a program every. I know there are people that were very upset when Penn State started doing these digital programs. They brought back the print ones this season. I saw.
Yep. I was for a while. And then and especially because for the longest time, for Penn State Beaver State and pictorials, I was writing something once a year, or so stuff. So there was stuff there. I'm kind of a keeper. I've got media guides and some programs, but probably not as many as I should. So it's probably fallen off in the past decade or so.
I've enjoyed buying those at antique stores type things. I don't know if in the moment there are probably a couple programs I would like to have. The ticket, and we've talked about this before, the ticket stubs, not having ticket stubs does annoy me a little bit. Just because those are a little bit easier to keep, not as thick and heavy. So okay.
Yeah, we paired a Penn State ticket stub from the North Dakota hockey game in Nashville with a picture from the game, right? And
that's
that
cool.
Downstairs.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool little thing to have a ticket stub from the game you were at and a picture of a goal, kind of thing. So yeah.
That's good. Yeah. All right. That was this week's podcast. Thank you to Seth for joining us. Let's see what else we've got. We've got stuff. It's the first time we're hawking stuff to you tonight. Long sleeve stuff. It might be, I'm just gonna say, it might be working on a new stuff design. That's all I'm gonna say. Might be doing that. We'll see. We'll see. There's a football game this weekend. I might see Steve. Hopefully, I see Steve. Not go say hi to Steve, or you can come say hi to me. We've got a website. There will be articles written about said football game prior to the football game and after the football game. It's called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a part for Steve called with
Steve.
Steve's got an email. It's
Steve@stuffsummersays.com.
I've got one. It's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. I think that's like relatively it. Subscribe button somewhere over here, maybe. Please do that. Thumbs up, 5 stars. Other than that, Twitter handles. Mine is at Stuff Summer Says. Steve says
at Steve Samsel.
That's it. Time to go watch the Steeler game. Hopefully that works out well for me. Okay, bye.